Hi everyone, I'm Taea, or just Tay, if you want. I'm going to be teaching you about form and shape today. But first, I'm going to do a little introduction since no one really knows me here. So here's some of my work from university. I graduated with my Bachelor of Fine Arts last year in the winter of 2023 from Grand Valley. So this is just like some of the stuff I made in school so you can like get a feel for the kind of work that I make. And if you have any questions or anything, or you just want to comment, you can pop it in the chat. I'll be keeping an eye on it, hopefully, but if I miss anything, you can ping me. These are some of the oil paintings I made. I love oil painting. A lot of like the techniques that I use and have learned come from a traditional background, very like oil painting based and like focused. So I just love those like traditional classic methods. And I feel like when you learn those, you can translate them into digital art and come out with really strong pieces. And then these were some of my works that I made for my senior thesis in my last year of school. It was a collection of landscapes. And then we put on like a little show. It was so cute and fun. I do a lot of studying. I love photo studies. I think it's really helpful to just be able to like sit down and like grind something out with thinking, but not thinking like too hard. Like you're not coming up with composition, you're not like doing anything crazy, you're just learning. So those are some of my studies. And then I also studied under Tiffany Mang. If any of you follow her on like Instagram or Twitter, she is a landscape painter and she also works in the industry. She like does color keys for Marvel and stuff like that. So I took her mentorship for a couple months right before I graduated. So these are some of the like things that we learned in her course. Like we did like this was like our first little assignment, and then she like told us like what we could improve on. So these were just photo studies, and we did like color studies from like masters and like composition studies, film studies. So it was just like kind of a collection of everything. It was really fun. If you have the time and like the resources, you should definitely check out her mentorship. I don't know if it's going on right now, but she teaches at Sentient Academy and she also has like a YouTube channel if you just want to like check her out. Tiffany May, she's super cool. Love her. And then this is just more of my like random personal work that you may or may not have seen. So that's just like a little feel of everything. So now we're gonna get into it. So shape and form are really important because they are the building blocks of like everything, basically. So we all know shapes because it's like, oops, sorry, my pen is huge. Things like circles. It's so weird to look at the screen and then also draw, sorry. But yeah, like circles, squares, triangles, stars, hearts, basically anything that you can think of that isn't 3D is a shape. Like you'll use them a lot for like shape design. I can't remember what it's called, but like you know what I mean in character design where you use like the silhouette and the shape to like give it more emphasis in like certain aspects. So yeah, those are your basic shapes, super important, but also when you take them and you turn them into 3D, then you get forms. Sorry, that was a really bad cue. But these will be your building blocks for like basically anything. Like if you learn these and you can like rotate them in space and you like nail these down, you can basically draw anything. Because anything, like I bet if you just like look around your room and you like find an object, you could look at it and you can like break it down into basic like rudimentary shapes or sorry, forms. I'm looking at my microphone right now and I'm like doing it. And it's also not just a drawing skill, it's like an observing skill. So once you like do this long enough, like it's kind of intuitive for me now because I've been doing it for so long. But once you get like the grasp on it, you'll just see it in like everything. You'll like look at something and be like, okay, I could that's like a cylinder. Like I could totally see it. And like this is like a little whatever. And it's also just really important to like have the grasp on 3D space when you're trying to translate something into a believable scene. Like this isn't just for like painting or like drawing. It's like if you are like working on a project and you have to translate something for a product designer, like it has to make sense for them. So you have to be able to translate those forms accurately and like think about your object in space. Like if we had like a little platform, right? And then you can like put something on it, right? So for your like 3D modeler or whoever that has to look at it so they know what they're supposed to be building or like doing. And same with like in animation or in comics, you're like, you want to have scenes that are believable. So like if you know how bodies or like objects move in space, you can create panels or like scenes that look believable. Like these are objects with weight and like stuff like that. So yeah. Oops. So I made just some like little demo ones with things in my room, which is totally, this is such a good exercise. Like if you should always be studying from life. These are photos for like the purpose of the exercise. But like if you have things in your room and like you just set them up and then you sit down and you like try to break it down into like the shapes and draw it, it's a really good way to like not only just be drawing, but also to like observe and like pick up on like the more subtle details. Like, and they won't be perfect. Like you'll have to do it a couple times. It looks easy. It's so hard when you first start doing it. But like you can see like this is like, let's change the color. This is kind of like a cube. And then it turns into another cube. Stuff like that. So that you can just like put it together very easily. So like you can take a complex object. I mean, this is just my water bottle, so it's not that complex. But you can take any object and like break it down. Or if you're drawing from imagination, you can be like, okay, I know this thing has to have this form and I know how to draw it, so I can like build it. Right? So you can go from there. So it's like that kind of stuff is really important to be able to get down. And the best ways that I found to do it are literally to just look at anything and draw it, even if it seems boring. Like it's like the kind of studying that you're like, oh, this is so boring and like easy. But then once you get into it, it's like a lot harder than it looks. So I did a couple more just to show like the types. Mine are a bit more like less shapy because I've been doing this for so long that it just comes naturally. But like you can see like, oh my gosh, my layers, the curve of my little plant holder. So if you know that that's like a cylinder basically, right? Going back in space, then you can like, oops, really easily put the form together. And then this helps with your values and like shading, or I guess rendering if you want to call it that too. Also, because you'll know the three-dimensionality of the object. Like this is obviously a cylinder. So you can like see how it wraps around with the contour lines. But yeah, this is my little Snoopy. I wanted to try to get like a good variety of objects because I feel like when you start doing this, it's like, oh, this like I don't know where to begin. So I just kind of wanted to show like how you can take even like really simple squishy things and you can still find the shapes. Like the little shape of his paw you can kind of see is like kind of a circle, kind of a square, but you can find like the different directions. That's another thing about like forms is you'll always know what direction your object or whatever is facing. So you'll never be confused because it has all these planes that imply what way a certain thing is facing, which is also very helpful for shading because if you have like a light source over here and you know that these planes are like being covered by his head, then you can like use that information to block out the light and like create a believable atmosphere, right? Hopefully that made sense. But yeah, this one is a lot more simple because he was so squishy. But you can also kind of see it here, how all the lines come together. And honestly, you can kind of see it on the object too. Sometimes you can just look at the objects and like kind of tell because he's got like the little seam lines, which definitely help. Which is why it's also good to like look at your objects too, or like even if you're struggling, you can trace over them and try to find it that way. There's nothing wrong with that. I do it sometimes too. So yeah, And then this one is like a lot more basic so that I could just like show you a more complex object and then like how to get into it more. So I started it off. And like you can kind of tell the planes already and like what's going where. It's like basically a rectangle if it got skinnier at the end. Right? So that's what I started with. And then once you have like these building blocks, like you can always start with like something that simple. Right? Sorry, I'm really bad at talking and drawing at the same time. I get like so focused. But like if you have something like this, then you can like take that and then like go in on it more, like and define certain elements because you know generally what direction they're going. Right? Like we know like this piece right here is on top of this little socket. So you can draw it out and you'll know that they're separate pieces. Hopefully that made sense. Sometimes I like say things and I'm like, I'm not sure if that even made sense. That's always how I think about it. It's like I'm always thinking about the planes when I do this because that just really helps me. Like it helps me to break everything down into like something sort of remotely flat and then get into it. I work with a lot of like straight lines because like the curved lines really mess me up. You can see it here how I made these really pointy. But it helps me and it might help you because then once you have like the flatness, you can go back in and round it out and like get all the fine little details and shading and everything. So it's kind of like that kind of thing. It also might help. I didn't do this. If you want to, for practicing, it might help is like laying things down on the ground. Like you can kind of see my table in the back. Because then you'll keep everything. Then you can like build from there, right? Like if you have this object here and it's coming off the ground, you can build it up so that you keep your sense of like weight while you're working on things. It's a lot of squares. If you nail the cube, you're good to go because like you can do anything with the cube basically. Now I'm gonna do just like a little demo of basically the same thing to kind of show you like the process that I'm doing in real time because I feel like when you like see these ones it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense, but it doesn't show you like how long it takes and like the kind of thinking that I'm doing when I'm actually doing it. So I wanted to take one of my things in my room and like literally go through it. Sorry if I'm like not talking while I'm doing it. I'll try to. It's so hard for me. But like this is a cute little, oops, sorry, I have such weird objects in my room. This is a cute little, I think it's a paperweight. I don't know. I should have grabbed it so I could show you. It's something my mom gave me. It's like a little nose, like statue figure thing. Like you can see like his lip and then his nose. Sorry. My 300 layers. Anyway, you can see like his little nose and like the lips. It's so cute. I literally never use it. It just sits on my desk. But I was like, this is such a perfect object for this kind of exercise because it's pretty simple, which if you're starting out, you want to do something simpler so that you can get the hang of it. You don't want to jump into something like this little skull because it's way too detailed and it has way too many like plane changes to really like pick up, like learn without getting overwhelmed right away. And like you can see, like this is such a basic shape at the bottom, super easy to understand. And this does get a little bit into perspective, but you don't really have to worry about that too much. If you know how to draw a cube in 1 point perspective, which is like basically what I'm doing, right? Super easy, super quick. We're not going to get into perspective because that's so confusing. But like basically if you can draw a 3D cube, you can do these kind of exercises. So basically what I do is I always look for anything that's like the simplest or like the biggest shapes first. And to me, this like little platform is like perfect that it's standing on because everything will come off of that. And these don't have to be perfect. they will probably be slightly off than like real life because the camera warps it, and it's like the point of the exercise is not getting it like picture perfect. It's more like understanding the weight and like volume that these things have. So we have our little thing. Mine's a little thing. And they'll look really sketchy at first, or at least mine do, because I like to kind of feel it out. I feel like it's very intuitive. Like it seems like a really rigid process, but when you're doing it, it's, for me at least, a lot more intuitive. Like I look at things and I'm like, okay, I'm kind of feeling it out. Like you don't want to be like an art robot and like have no feeling in your shapes and volumes. And then since we have the base, we know that this little piece, you can't see it at all. We know that this little piece comes off of that, right? So we can follow that. I mean, I guess we could basically, it's kind of a cone. It's kind of weird shaped. But basically, if you have like the base of it, you can bring it up. Don't worry about having straight lines either, right? And then we can carve it out of here. So we know the tip comes down and then it comes out. The back line makes it kind of confusing. If you make them lighter, you can kind of like see it better, but this kind of shows like the carving process. Like you're taking your cube and you're basically turning it into a different shape. Like this is what I'm noticing is like this is kind of flat. So we can use that to carve out the side plane. And like this will be huge. But it's like those kind of little things that you, when you've been doing this for a while, you just kind of pick up on. And since we have our little square here at the bottom, we can like carve it out, right? Because if you have, let me draw one. Oh my God, that was so bad. We're gonna do it this way. If you have like a little thing like this and you know it's wider at the top, like it is right here, like how it kind of comes out and then goes back in, you can draw your top triangle, your top square slightly bigger. And then you can like connect the corners and that will give you that kind of curve. My eraser is so light. But it's like that kind of thing. Once you like have the cubes and you know how to like manipulate them, then you can basically build anything, like even with circles, which never look like spheres. I always have to cut them in half so that I can like tell which way it's facing. Because when you think about a sphere, it doesn't really look like a sphere until you shade it. But even the spheres, you can like cut out pieces to make things like, I don't know. The first thing I thought of for some reason was like shoulder armor because they're always like circular. But you can like cut out the pieces. And then you know you have two planes here, right? See how it kind of like pops it out? Pretty fun. Once you like get the hang of it, it's kind of fun to see what you can do with it. Like if you ever draw like dragons or anything, like this is like the cylinder is a great way to make like horns. Or Pac-Man. Yeah, it does kind of look like Pac-Man. That's when I was doing the fish. Where did it go? That's what I did to get like the mouth here, is I like had the circle and then I built like a little thing on top of it. And that's what I kept thinking of. I was like, this looks like Pac-Man, like because I didn't draw the plant so that you could like see it, and I was like, this looks so weird. Oops. So like yeah, it's like that kind of thing. Like you can literally make anything. It just takes a little bit of practice. Sorry, I never use like the page spread view because it messes me up. but I knew that it would be good for like presenting because I could have like a little slideshow basically. But yeah, so now that we have kind of our basic shape, I always have to clean them up. Some people can just do it and have like all of the planes going all at the same time. I'll get too confused. Like I always have to clean up my sketches just a little bit, like not too clean, but just a little bit, right? This has a little bit of curve to it, but we're gonna make it straight for the purpose of the exercise, because now we can take this and literally just build it down. Oops, sorry. You should always be following like your same parallels, basically. Except this one doesn't really follow it. So it's got this weird little curve. And you can see I don't place them like perfectly right the first time. This is like so much trial and error. Like you just have to keep trying things and like doing it and feeling it out to get it right. Like no one's gonna get it perfect on the first try unless like you're a genius or something. Like anytime I'm sketching or like building things, I always have to do it a couple times, and like sometimes I even have to like put my iPad down and not look at it for like a couple hours and like step away, or else I just like won't be able to do it. Which is another good tip. It's like stepping away from the screen for a little bit. I feel like no one really talks about that, but like I have to all the time. So you can kind of see it's kind of strange because it's so straight, but you can kind of see like the way we've built this up. Hopefully it's like translating, right? But if you ever do the cube and you like try to rotate it full 360, it's really nice, for me at least, to like color in the sides, all 6 of them. I think there's 6 when you unroll it. Hold on. 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. If you give them all a different color, then you can like when you flip it or like rotate it slightly, you can keep track of what's going where so it doesn't just look the same from all angles. Because I've like whenever I've practiced this and I've tried to rotate it without coloring it in, I get so confused and I'm like they all look the same. So this looks kind of straight to me. So this is kind of how I break it down. Like to me, these are the planes that I'm seeing. This even, I feel like you could maybe split it, but that's a lot more subtle than it needs to be. So I feel like my nose is up way too high. Oh my God. I always shift things around when I'm drawing them. I don't know if that's bad practice or not. I don't think it is. I feel like if you want to adjust it just slightly to fix it, that's fine. I've also been doing this for like forever. But also, if you want to just redraw it, you probably will learn more like muscle memory. And then I'm always paying attention to like where things are in relation to each other. Like this looked too straight to me. I mean, sorry, too curved. It looked straighter. And one thing about drawing that no one ever talks about is like to move your whole shoulder. You can't really tell because my lines are actually, never mind. I was gonna say they're kind of wobbly, and then I drew that and I was like, actually, it's not that bad. But if you draw from your shoulder, you can get a lot more like clean lines instead of like little scratchy ones, which is kind of how my sketch looks right now. But like, you get it. Right, so now we can put his lip in there because it comes off the bottom of this. And we know it's just a little bit out from the nose. And he has this little, what is that called? Like your philtrum, like right here. I think that's what it's called. And now we've basically done it. From here, you could probably just further refine. And that's like kind of the whole shape when you think about it. But see how like we built that so fast with like very basic shapes. And when you start to learn to like break things down like that, you can come up with anything really. Like if you're like, I want to draw this chair, but I want it to be in a different angle, you'll be able to take apart that chair and rotate all the like little pieces, and then you'll have the chair in a different spot and it won't look super wonky or weird, right? So that's the beauty of this. It's very simple, but also not, if that makes sense. Mine is a little tilted. I'm so nitpicky when I do these. You can probably kind of see it, how this is like way straighter. Fix it. Easy fix. And like if you have something like this, it's super easy to shade because you're like, I know this is a flat plane. I know these are flat. Right, something like that, probably depending on your lighting. And now we have a cute little nose guy thing. I would recommend if you have like bottles or something in your room, like bottles. I have so many perfume bottles. That's why it came to mind. And like lip gloss. If you have like cans of like soda or like anything, even mugs is like a really good one because they have like the handle, and it's like just basically a simple cylinder with a little piece on it. Things like that. Sorry, I tend to zoom out a lot. Things like that are really good to start with because you get a grasp of like one simple shape. There it is. And you can tell how my camera kind of warped it because this is like way longer. But for the most part, you get a form that reads, even though it's not like perfectly photo accurate, you can still tell that like these things have volume and are like in a 3D space, which is kind of the goal. Except this looks crazy. I'm such a nitpicker. I keep looking at the screen and then like looking at my iPad and it always looks different. I feel like I talked so fast. Like that was kind of basically it for the demo. Like, and then I just have a couple ways to study on here because I feel like it depends on like where you're starting. Like if you're more of a beginner when it comes to thinking this way and like thinking in 3D, the best way to practice is to literally just like do things like this. Like do the circles in like different well, I guess not the circles because the planes are weird on the sphere. But like things like the cube and then like turning it like kind of like that. Like this is like kind of weird. I drew it weird. But like things like that, like going back in space, you can like take chunks out of it, which is a good exercise, right? And now you have kind of looks like a little dumpster, right? So you can do a lot with the cubes. That's what I would recommend. If you're more of a beginner, I would recommend just messing around and like getting used to drawing things in 3D if you're struggling, I've found that like if you find 3D models online of cubes, then like you can use that as reference if you're like super lost or like you're looking at it and you're like, these look so weird, like nothing looks right. Sometimes it is nice to just have the reference, and then once you get used to it, you can put that down and then start doing them from imagination. If you feel like you kind of know about this, because this is very basic, like very beginner friendly. If you feel like you're a little bit past that and you're like more like on this level, I would recommend doing these like even just as a warm up if you're like working on your comic or you're like, working on whatever, like a commission, whatever. Doing like one of these really quick as just like a little warm up. Like we did this in like what, like half an hour maybe, like 20 minutes. I wasn't keeping track, but like if you do one of these, then you get warmed up and you're like ready to draw other things. Warm ups are huge. I feel like no one really talks about that too much. At least for me, at least warming up is huge. If I don't warm up, all of my lines look so ugly and bad. So I always have to do like something, even if it's just like figure drawing or whatever. These are great warm ups. Like even just like doing things like this or like the cubes or whatever for like 5-10 minutes before you start working on whatever you're actually working on will warm you up, and then you'll be ready to like draw whatever. I also think doing cast studies, which is like what this is on the side that the little arrow is pointing to, is really helpful when you're getting more into like values and like thinking about like a whole space. But I wouldn't recommend it if you're not comfortable drawing like the cubes and the cylinders already, because this is honestly more like value based and like painting than like learning the form. But you can find tons of them on like Pinterest that are just like great still lives. Love still lives. Or even better, I didn't write this down, I should have. You can set one up in your room and just like take a couple things in your room and like just put them all next to each other and then just draw that. That's like honestly way better. I should have wrote that down. Oh yeah. Also, if you think you've got the cubes and like cylinders and everything down, learning to like squash and stretch them is huge. That already looks like a little party hat, right? And then I kind of talked about it already, but like the dragon horns, like if you have like a cylinder going back in space, that was really bad, right? Something like that. Then you can get the contours, right? And then this is so sorry, that was really, I drew that so fast it was really bad, but you get the idea. Like you can like build these things and like learn to do them. So like carving, learning how to carve chunks out of things like these two, and then like learning to manipulate them. Like if you have something really flat and skinny, like I don't know, a pencil or something, I don't know, things like that. And even like taking chunks up, or even like this one that we talked about, like you can do it with ovals, cylinders, right? So if you know that you have something that turns into something wider, kind of like my cup from earlier, then you'll have the basis for bringing them together. And now you got something that kind of looks like a crayon, right? Like a little baby crayon or a vase, even. We can even do the opposite and turn it into a vase. Wow. Not the world's cutest vase that you could ever find, but you get the idea. You can just build things on top of each other and it will turn into something greater eventually. But it's like those kind of exercises like are really helpful to get you to a level where you can basically do anything from imagination. So if this is something you want to get better at, that's what I would recommend. And I can like send these slides in the Discord or something too, because I know I talk pretty fast. So if you want to like read them, or if you want me to go back to any of them to look at, let me know. I would recommend doing squares first and then moving to cylinders. I'm going to go back one more time. Because if you have the square, sorry, it's really easy to turn it into a cylinder because if you find the cross section, that's like such an easy way to get a perfect ellipse. And now you have it. That's more of a perspective thing though. So I wouldn't worry about it. But yeah, that was kind of all I had. We kind of, I know we started late, but we basically made it to the full hour. I knew I was going to talk a little fast. That's my bad. If anyone has any questions, I can answer them now or later. And also you can oh my god, someone drew along with it. Oh my god, that's so cute. That does look really good. Yeah, I wish I would have grabbed my thing. I have like the strangest setup. I would get up and show it for you, but then I'd have to like crawl over my laptop. So it's so cute. It's like this little nose statue. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, you can always find me on my social media. I check my DMs like all the time. Like I will answer you. I'm so good at answering DMs. Like I check them and I answer like literally everyone. Or you can always email me or just like friend me on Discord and DM me. I'm not online all the time, but I will see your message.